Thank you for joining us for the East Mediterranean Business Culture Alliance's The Status of Orthodox Monasteries under Islamic Rule and Why This Still Matters and Important. My name is Lou Katsos, EMBCA's president, and I will be moderating today's panel. Our distinguished panel includes Professor Johannes Niehoff Panagiotidis of the Freie Universität Berlin, Jurist Dr. Anastasios Nikopoulos, law historian at the Freie University also, academic researcher and PhD candidate in business studies at the university also, Rahime Aksa Boyraz, Istanbul-based legal professional and researcher Ali Emre Desat, and Professor Dr. Theocharis Gregoriadis of the Freie University of Berlin. We are also joined by special guest attendees by Dr. Yasmin Amin, an Egyptian German who received her PhD in Islamic Studies from Exeter University's Institute of Arab and Islamic Research. And her research covers various aspects of gender studies, early Muslim society and culture, as well as the original texts of Islamic history, law, and hadith. Also joining us as a guest attendee is Kamel Mirkhalaf, a graduate of law and Islamic law from the University of Tehran, and a researcher specializing in Islamic jurisprudence and legal traditions. His scholarly work also focuses on the history and culture of the Iranian diaspora, as well as Iran's historical heritage in Istanbul. He has authored numerous articles across the range of cultural and historical subjects and serves on the editorial board of the journal Waqf, Everlasting Heritage, for which he compiled the special issue dedicated to the city of Isfahan, and is proficient in English, Arabic, and Turkish. Welcome, everyone. For centuries across the East Mediterranean, Orthodox monasteries and Christian institutions endured and often flourished under Islamic governance. Their survival was not accidental. It was rooted in a sophisticated legal and economic framework that provided protection, continuity, and a defining status within Islamic law. At the heart of this system stood the institution of Waqf, a charitable endowment that rendered property legally inalienable and protected from confiscation or arbitrary transfer. Although primarily associated with Islamic religious foundations, Waqf mechanisms through decree, imperial privilege, and local negotiation also shaped the legal standing of Christian monasteries and communal institutions. For Orthodox monastic communities, this framework provided extraordinary stability. Landholdings were preserved. Agricultural production continued. Revenue streams supported liturgical life, charitable outreach, education, manuscript preservation, and local employment. Monasteries were not secluded spiritual enclaves. They functioned as economic pillars and social stabilizers within multi-religious imperial societies. In many regions, monastic estates sustained rural economies and cultural continuity across centuries of political transition. Their embeddedness within imperial legal systems often provided more durable and were more durable than modern reforms that later sought to replace them. The decisive rupture came not primarily through conquest, but with the rise of centralized nation states. 19th century successor governments seeking uniform property regimes and fiscal systems struggled to reconcile inherited Waqf-based and customary arrangements with modern legal codes. The shift from imperial pluralism to national homogenization created new tensions around ecclesiastical property, jurisdiction, and minority protection. This tension was already visible in early Hellenic state under, for example, Yannis Kapodistrias, who faced complex questions of church property, land redistribution, and sovereignty over territories previously governed by Ottoman legal structures. Similar challenges unfolded throughout the former Ottoman world and continue today. Contemporary disputes underscore the enduring relevance of this issue, from the special legal status of Mount Athos to the historical monastery of Mount Sinai and the long-running legal controversies surrounding Mor Gabriel Monastery in Turkey. These are not merely questions of religious freedom or heritage preservation. They are also deeply economic questions. Legal uncertainty surrounding monastic property affects land use, agricultural productivity, tourism, employment, environmental stewardship, and regional investment. Monasteries remain custodians of vast cultural landscapes and historic assets. When their legal status is unsettled, economic consequence and confidence and long-term planning suffer. Re-examining the status of Orthodox monasteries under Islamic rule is therefore not an exercise in nostalgia. It is a serious inquiry on how legal continuity, historical legitimacy, and economic sustainability intersect in the modern world. The legacy of Waqf-based arrangements continues to influence minority rights, interstate relations, fiscal policy, and development planning. Economies do not function on capital alone. They depend on predictability, institutional memory, and trust in legal frameworks. Where historical realities are ignored, instability emerges. Where they are thoughtfully integrated into contemporary law, continuity becomes a foundation of sustainable growth. This panel brings together leading scholars, legal historians, economists, and practitioners to examine these questions with intellectual rigor and contemporary relevance. Thank you again for joining us for what promises to be a rich and important conversation on history, law, economics, and the future of religious institutions in the East Mediterranean and beyond. Our first presenter is Professor Johannes Niehoff Panagiotidis. He is a German scholar of Byzantine Studies from the Istanbul Hellenic family. Since 2007, he has served as Professor of Byzantine Studies at the Freie Universität Berlin, where he has also held senior administrative roles. He previously taught at the Central European University and held visiting appointments at institutions including Princeton University and the Boğaziçi University. His research focuses on Byzantine intellectual history, Byzantine Jewish relations, Greek-Arabic cultural exchange, and the transition from Byzantine to the Ottoman world, with particular attention to Mount Athos and the Eastern Mediterranean. A prolific writer, he has published numerous monographs and articles on Byzantine historiography, Judeo-Greek literature, translation movements, and medieval intercultural theology. He has also led major international research projects, including collaborations funded by the German Research Foundation and the German-Israeli Foundation. Professor Panagiotidis is a polyglot with native fluency in modern Greek and German and reading knowledge of numerous ancient and modern languages. He continues to supervise doctoral research and teaches Byzantine literature and Greek literature in Berlin and abroad. Welcome, Johannes, and thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, hello to everybody. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
Oh, this is good. So hello to everybody. Thank you, dear Lou, for the invitation. I'm proud and happy to be with you again. I was so proud that my camera finally was working, but now it expired. I don't know why. I ask you for forgiveness for this. Yeah, let's begin. The institution of Waqf is very old, and since we have very early sources for the nascence and development of Sharia, we can follow its development. No, but first the etymology. Waqf comes from the Arabic verb waqafa, which means to stand still, no, to stop. Wukuf is standing, no, it in modern Arabic or Farsi, it can mean the parking place, no? And actually a waqf is an institution that permits you parking property. But if you look closer to the genesis of waqf, you have the usual first traces in hadith, and then very early in the great masters of Sharia, Abu Hanifa and so on, Anastasios Nikopoulos and myself have now recently published a long chapter on the origin of waqf. You see that this etymology, standing, is if you keep inside Arabic, is somehow weird. No, why is money standing? No, or you immobilize it. No, but if you look closer, you see the age-old Byzantine word stasis. Stasis is an ancient Greek word, but in Byzantine Greek it can mean already in the 6th century. It can mean pious foundation. So the transfer of Greek stasis, and Greek stasis in this sense, you find it in the dictionary of Lempi, is earlier than Arabic because it's already attested in the 6th century. You see that the institution of waqf has, at least in part, roots in the Byzantine Roman law. This has not well been explored. There is a very interesting, also ideological, taint discussion on the origin of Sharia, how much it was influenced by the Byzantine Roman law. For this, Anastasios Nikopoulos is a better specialist. But the institution of waqf is that you make an object, theoretically, if you look to hadith, it can be even, and it can be every object. No, it can be even, the classical example is a tabar, no, or a hatchet. You can dedicate or devote it to God, and then the proprietor, the owner, is God himself. No, and but very quickly this develops already in the early Islamic time into the direction of landed property. So you have landed property which is unalienable. It cannot be sold, and there should be not. It should not be dissolved. No, it cannot be inherited in this sense. So it cannot be divided among various heirs. And soon this develops into a major economic factor in the Islamic world. No, estimations vacillate, but you can think that in most Islamic countries, 1/3 or 1/4 in the classical period were property of waqf. No, the Arabic plural is awqaf. And we have the documentary evidence of very old waqf. No, the maybe best known Islamic waqf we have is the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the Qubbatus Sahra. Now, for them, we have very old papyri, even from the Middle Ages up to the 19th century, and there has been done a lot of work. The question was very early if Christian institutions or even Jewish synagogues can become Waqf too. No, that a mosque, that a hospital, that a soup kitchen, no, is a Waqf, an Islamic soup kitchen, is a Waqf, is somehow natural. You know, it was taken over by all Islamic regimes, and there is no big difference between Shia and Sunnah in this sense. But if a Christian institution can become a Waqf, this is difficult. And until recently, I did not know when this was recognized, but I read now all the published Arabic documents from the 12th century of Mount Sinai. You know, they are in Arabic and they were kept in the Metochion of Mount Sinai in Istanbul until they were published by Samuel Miklos Stern already in the 60s with an English translation. And there it is 100% clear that the Fatimid state of Egypt, you know, recognized the monastery of Mount Sinai as a Waqf. This means the Christian institution of a monastery and probably also a synagogue, we have the Cairo Geniza, were on the same juridical status like Islamic institutions. No, and for understanding the survival and the economic role of Christian monasteries, also Coptic monasteries. No, my friend Magdi is not with us today, but in theory it is the same. Also Catholic monasteries, for example, here in Istanbul, had the same, or Armenian monasteries, Syriac monastery, Mor Gabriel, had the same status inside an Islamic state. No, and if we concentrate now, and I'm happy that my doctoral candidate, Sayed Mirkhalaf, is with us, because nobody knows normally about the role of Waqf, which is called in Farsi Bonyad, in Shia. No? But if we concentrate now on the majority, this is the Ottoman Empire, we have the same legislation all over the Ottoman Empire. This means from Romania down to Sudan and so on, we're all under the same legislation of Waqf. And the special situation in the Ottoman Empire was that in the Ottoman Empire, the judge, this means the juridical organ of the Sultan, was not obliged to follow only Sharia. No, Sharia was one source of Ottoman legislation. This is an exceptional structure inside the Ottoman Empire, that you have the possibility for an Ottoman judge, a Qadi, to use all the classical Sharia, which he could do, or he could use the Qanuname, which is the supplementary legislation by the sultans, but de facto an innovation against Sharia very often. The most famous Qanunames are the Qanuname by Süleyman Kanuni, who is called Kanuni by this reason, and by Fatih Mehmed Sultan, the conqueror of Constantinople. Both are very important to show how Waqf and Christian Waqf were treated. And then we have all the juridical fatwas, the opinions by the chief lawmaker of Süleyman Kanuni, by Abu Su'ud, which are preserved and even in part edited. So the Christian monasteries, and this is especially true for Mount Athos, had a special privileged position inside the Ottoman Empire. No? And this is exceptionally, and I don't know what my friend Mirkhalaf will say about this, that you have even new foundations of monasteries in the Ottoman Empire, which in the classical Sharia is forbidden. But you have, for example, the monastery on Mount Athos. Stavronikita is the foundation of the late 16th century when Byzantium was extinct already. No? So, and all this property became a problem in the 19th century with the rise of the nation states. No, this was the big, and they had all the example of the French Revolution of them to nationalize, in their view, to nationalize this property, that it allegedly belonged to the people. And what followed in many cases is that the newborn states like Greece, at least in the south, or Romania, they took over all this property. No, very often without indemnization, sometimes with, it depends, it is complicated, but a flood of processes, of lawsuits followed. And since many parts of the former Ottoman Empire were conquered by Greece, for example, or by Bulgaria, but 100 years ago, this issue is still a major economic factor in modern Balkan and Near East economy. A special case is Mount Sinai, because Mount Sinai has little Ottoman evidence. Mount Sinai became Ottoman only in the 16th century. And you have huge evidence in Arabic, from the Mamluks, and even older. But this has been poorly edited. We have actually two editions, one for the Arabic, one for the Ottoman, and very few studies on this. Mount Sinai is a special case because it was conquered when Sharia was just developing. We are speaking about the 7th, 8th century. So Mount Sinai could be a good test case for studying the development of Sharia as applied to Christian monasteries, if the archive would be open. This is what I had to say. Thank you for listening so far.
Thank you so much, Johannes, and we'll come back.
I hope it was not too brief, but you are most welcome to answer, to ask, and I will try to answer. The important point is that the link, this just for finishing, that de facto the Byzantine pious foundation and the classical Arabic Sharia Waqf, as has been shown by Anastasios Nikopoulos, are de facto the same. They have the same root in Byzantine provincial law. This is what I had to say. Sorry, Lou.
No, not a problem. We'll come back, because I do have a question in particular about the documents that you were saying that we do not have access to. Okay, can you just answer that one little question? We'll come back to it obviously when we have the bigger panel discussion. But you made a statement. I'm just curious.
Oh, which question, Lou?
It has to do with documents that we do not have access to. Do we have access to Mount Sinai, to all the documents, or not really?
Yeah, this is complicated. This is, as always, a question of Forschungsgeschichte, history of research. Mount Sinai was discovered by this German thief, Konstantin Tischendorf, in the 19th century, but they were only interested in old Bible manuscripts. So you should divide between manuscripts, Bible manuscripts, theological manuscripts, beautifully illuminated classics, Gregorios from Nazianz, and documentary evidence. And the strange thing is, while we know a lot about the manuscripts from Mount Sinai, about the documentary evidence, we know almost nothing.
Interesting.
No, they have here fundus in the Patriarchate in Istanbul, but they are all from Ottoman times. They are patriarchal Sigilia, and they are the only I know which are in Greek.
Thank you so much.
Then you have an unknown number of Arabic, many hundreds of Arabic documents who have been edited and translated in part, I think only a maximum of 20% by a German, Ernst, but he did not know about Byzantine church law. This would something be for Anastasios Nikopoulos. No, and especially Byzantine church law in Arabic garb. No, and then you have Ottoman documents beginning with Selim Yavuz Selim in the 16th century, and he edited about 40, no, sorry, about a bit more, 50 documents, also with a German translation. But this German translation is not very good and the commentary is poor. And this is everything which has been done for the documentary evidence on Mount Sinai. And now with all these troubles and difficulties, I tried to help the monks, but I said to them, I need access to your archive because they don't have a catalog. No, every archive lives from a catalog. And there is a catalog in English by a man called Kamel, but this catalogs work in the sense you have a document here in Ottoman language, 75 to 35 centimeter, content mixed. So this is too poor to get any information out of this. No, actually what you need is if you do it properly, a scientific way is to have an international project with a few collaborators, not disturbing the issachia of the monks, but to make a catalogue raisonné, just about the content, which wakf, where, which property, and so on. No, nobody knows how many documents they have there in Sinai.
Very good, thank you. Our next presenter is Dr. Anastasios Nikopoulos. He is a jurist and law historian. He was a member of the Philosophical and Human Studies Faculty Institute of Greek and Latin Philology at the Freie Universität of Berlin, where he taught history and institutions of Roman, Byzantine, and post-Byzantine law. His scholarly specializations include Athonian and Sinai law, and he has both researched and served as a legal advisor to Mount Athos. He has authored scientific studies, monographs, numerous articles, and presentations at scholarly conferences on various academic topics of the Athonian, Sinaitic, and more broadly, Byzantine and post-Byzantine law. Welcome, Anastasios, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks a lot, Lou, for the invitation. Hello, everybody. I thanks Yanis for your kind words, and especially for the kind your contribution into the frame of the research of Athonian archives. We are working there since many years ago, and the product of this research is a number of papers, of articles in scientific reviews, and some monographies. Yanis referred to these works. Under the juridical aspect, the world of the East Mediterranean basin, including southeastern Europe and Asia Minor, and Egypt, all this world was a unified world into a juridical aspect since the Roman period, throughout the Byzantine period until the last Commonwealth, namely the Ottoman Commonwealth, because Ottoman Empire was the successor of Roman Byzantine Empire. And that is quite visible under the lens into the aspect of institution. Historically, for the historians, is this great historical event of this Commonwealth world, Roman Byzantine and post-Byzantine Ottoman, it quite ununderstandable. Only just after a juridical exploration could someone have a clear view of this historical event, of this result of the historical procedure, the legal institutions since the Roman period throughout the Byzantine until the end of the Ottoman period display this Commonwealth phenomenon. Why am I highlighting this element? Because all the legal institutions, for example, including Vakf institution, are just clearly explicated under this point, into the frame of this point of view, namely under the Commonwealth conception. Otherwise, all this institution should become unreasonable without any explication, or at least quite complicated. The paradigm of Vakf that Professor Panagiotidis extensively explicated to our panel, such an institution is understandable just under this focus, under the juridical focus, the institutional focus. Why? Because the Muslims, the Ottomans, namely the Ottomans, as the last commonwealth factor of all this world, of all East Mediterranean world, not simply adopted, but really used to continue the Roman Byzantine legal and institutional tradition. The year 1453, namely the year of the fall of Constantinople, means nothing into the frame of an institutional aspect. Probably, I'm not a historian, I'm law historian, but I'm wondering if the year 1453 meant the fall of the greatest city of the world, namely Constantinople, or it means the replacement in the administration and the government, because the Ottomans probably didn't behave as conqueror. Probably. I'm not historian. I'm historian of the institution. I cannot explain the historian events, but I can explain and interpret the institutions. Institutionally, the year 1453 means nothing. Any change means opposite, means a continuation. And real indeed, the legal institutions from the Byzantine period throughout the Ottoman period until the dissolution of last Commonwealth, of Ottoman Commonwealth, namely in the beginning of 20th century, not in 15th century, in 20th century, in the century when all of us were born. So until the beginning of 20th century, we had all this region, in East Mediterranean region, a commonwealth dated since Roman period, from Roman period through Byzantine period until the end of Ottoman period. All this world, these empires, these successive empires were functioning as a commonwealth, at least into the frame of an institutional aspect. The institutions.
To hear these words from a Greek is really exceptional.
Repeat, please, Yanis, that you said. Please repeat that. Okay, Yanis, maybe he wants to highlight.
No, I agree with you, but this is for the audience, not to
Yes.
see what
Yes.
issues
You
are
highlight,
at stake here in this panel discussion.
So the institution of Vakf has a different meaning, namely has a commonwealthy meaning. And that is important, in example, in the case of Sinai, because Sinai,
Yeah, sure.
Nowadays, into the frame of modern Egyptian state, is just a Vakf, like a Muslim Vakf. Professor Panagiotidis has already explained the special elements of a Vakf. The same elements were the elements of the same institution during the Byzantine period. So Ottoman and Islamic world in generally retained the same institution, respected it, and strengthened this institution with a sustainability. The same case occurs on Mount Athos. Professor Johannes Panagiotidis had referred on the case of Mount Athos. Sinai, the same. So these entities, these religious and cultural entities are explored better under this aspect of the continuation of legal institution. And Vakf is a legal institution, adopted by the Muslims from Byzantine legal history, because all monasteries in Byzantine Empire were functioning as vakf, ιερά αφιερώματα, pie cause. Professor Panagiotidis has referred to pie cause. So that means since the Roman period, under the Roman law, under the Roman classical law, which adopted the kernel of this institution, namely the dowry, because vakf means dowry of an entity, of a cultural and religious entity on purpose to be sustainable throughout the centuries. That is the deeper meaning of a vakf, of a metochion, dependence houses, of a monastery. It's like a foundation. Every foundation can be protected and get sustainability throughout its life, just only by supporting its economy. And vakf means in a deeper analysis, economy in the broader meaning of the word, not business but economy. Mount Athos as a monastic state, and Sinai even older, more ancient. Sinai is dated since the foundation of Christianism, is the same age with the Christianity. Emperor Justinian in the 6th century built the construction we see nowadays, but Sinai as an institution exists since the beginning of Christianity. So the dowry of Sinai, namely the treasures, the manuscripts, libraries, archives, all this dowry is a cultural heritage. It's the reason that UNESCO declared Mount Sinai as a monument of World Heritage. That is the reason, just simply. And on purpose to get a sustainability, all this dowry, this cultural dowry, needs an endowment, an economy, in the broader meaning of the term, not business but economy. That is the deeper meaning of vakf. And the Muslim vakfs also have their own economy in the broader meaning of the term. In conclusion, under the unification of legal institution, that was the achievement by Roman, Byzantine, post-Byzantine and Ottoman empires. We have in our world, nowadays, we have this rest of all these ancient monastic communities, along with their dowry, with treasures, namely with archives, with libraries, with manuscripts. And the manuscripts of Mount Sinai, as well of Mount Athos, are the manuscripts that construct the basis, the scientific basis of and the fundamental of all science, not only of humanitarian science, but also of so-called positive science, physics, medicine, mechanics, mathematics, and a lot of topics. Thank you very much again for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Anastasios, and thank you for that discussion of continuity of institutions from the ancient Roman to the Byzantine to the Ottoman, and the dysfunction into the 19th century in the creation of modern states. And we'll get back into that conversation, but thank you for that. It was a very valuable contribution. And I agree with Yanni, who stated that that's a comment that not too many people are willing to express. Thank you for the honesty of that particular discussion. Our next panelist is Rahime Aksa Boyraz. She is a PhD candidate in Byzantine Studies at the Freie Universität of Berlin. She previously studied history with law as a secondary major during her undergraduate studies. She completed her MA at Boğaziçi University in Istanbul, where her thesis examined the reception and legal status of Byzantine architectural heritage in Ottoman Istanbul. In this panel, she will draw on this research to discuss the status of Byzantine monasteries in Ottoman Istanbul and their legal and institutional transformation under Islamic law. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It feels amazing to be here because since a long while ago, I have been following these EMBCA talks on YouTube. So today it feels really amazing to be here taking a part in one of them. So today I wish to talk briefly about the legal status of architectural heritage of Byzantines in the Ottoman Constantinople. And I have a PowerPoint, if I can share my screen. I hope you can see it now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see it. Thank you.
Okay. So this talk will cover parts of my previous research, which was my MA thesis at Boğaziçi University in Istanbul. And at the end, it will be about the monastic experience in Ottoman capital in the classical Ottoman period. And I will talk about specifically the monastic experience of Greek Orthodox Patriarchate, as its seat was the Theocharis Monastery. So I wish to start by talking about the refoundation of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate under Ottoman rule. I think you know the Council of Florence and how the churches of the East and the West were united against the Turkish threat prior to the 1453. And it meant the abolition of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate in Constantinople as an autonomous legal entity. But after the conquest of the city, Mehmet II aimed to re-establish it. Among the earliest actions of him at his new capital. And he was informed about Gennadios Skolarios as a potential patriarch. And he did all his best to find him. And he was by then in Edirne or Adrianople as a war captive, and he brought it back to Constantinople and somehow convinced him to serve as his first Greek Orthodox Patriarchate under the Ottoman rule. And Mehmet II firstly granted the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate the Church of the Holy Apostles as the seat, and then the monastery of Theocharis. I wish to mention this passage from Critopoulos, a contemporary chronicler. It briefly talks about how it was refounded under the Ottoman rule. He said, in the end, he made him patriarch and high priest of the Christians and gave him, among many other rights and privileges, to rule of the church and all its power and authority, no less than that enjoyed previously under the emperors. He also granted him the privilege of delivering before him fearlessly and freely many good disquisitions concerning the Christian faith and doctrine. So as an example to that, there's this incident which is mentioned in Historia Patriarchica, which allegedly was written by members of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate in the 16th century. It talks about an occasion between Mehmet II and Gennadios Skolarios. I think it's very impressive considering the personality of Mehmet II. He himself made this private personal visit to the Patriarchate to talk to him about his faith. So it said, then the Sultan went in person to the Patriarchate, to the Church of the Pamakaristos, and he went into the chapel, and he spoke and discussed with him the Patriarch, Lord Gennadios. And the Patriarch demonstrated to him the entire truth of our faith, without a single fear, and wrote down for him, according to his questions, 20 chapters, which appear below, at one at a time, what it says, and gave these to the same Sultan. I just find this incident very impressive about the relations between the early re-established Greek Orthodox Patriarchate and the Ottoman authorities, specifically the Sultan himself. Here I wanted to show you two engravings and some depictions of how the city of Constantinople looked in the 16th century and where the patriarchal church was located. Here it is. Here would be Topkapı Palace. I hope you can see my cursor, but I mean, it's here in the shores of, like, very close to the shores of the Golden Horn, but on a higher hill, let's say. And here's another one. This is how it looked from. Sorry.
No.
Okay. So this is how it looked from the other side of the Golden Horn. So you can see it was located at the top of a hill, and it was very visible. This is very crucial to consider a monumental building, which is the central building of the Christians of the Ottoman capital, and it was located at a very visible spot of the capital city here. So here I have some discussions about the Greek. Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Can you still see? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I wish to briefly talk about the legal personality of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate under the Ottoman rule. So legally, it was considered as a multezim within the Islam system, and it was responsible for collecting taxes from subordinate bishoprics under its administrative entity. And it collected taxes via local bishops to be submitted to the Patriarchate and ultimately to the imperial treasury. And bishops collected taxes for the revenue that was produced by the clergy through church holdings. But the Patriarch would represent the revenues.
Sorry for interrupting. This is very, sorry, Rahime, this is very important. Sorry for interrupting, but for everybody who listens all over the world, if one asks which was the social economic rule of the Orthodox bishops in the Ottoman Empire, there were tax collectors in the name of the Sultan. Sorry, Rahime. This is the crucial point for the whole story. Multezim.
Thank you very much for... No, thank you very much for your contribution.
Çok mühimdir.
Evet, öyle görünüyor. So it actually is very crucial. Thanks to Professor Niehoff for contributing to this point. So they were trusted as tax collectors by the imperial treasury, and they collected taxes from the subordinate ecclesiastical entities via local bishops, and then it was firstly submitted to the Patriarchate and ultimately to the imperial treasury. Bishops collected taxes for the revenue that was produced by the clergy through church holdings. The Patriarch would represent the revenues of the entire organization of the Orthodox Church, which collected all provincial Greek Orthodox churches. And there was also some taxes the Patriarch himself was subject to. It was the two of them were like Patriklik Rusumu, the patriarchal tax, and the Metropolitlik Rusumu, metropolitan taxes. Also politically, they could be very influential. Senior priests who worked at the Patriarchate were influential in the appointment of metropolitan bishops, who served at a more local level, and they could have more voice in the deciding process of their appointments. And about the financial sources of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchates under the Ottoman rule, donations constituted a large part in their financial sources. And some donations were received along liturgical practices, like during the regular visits to the Patriarchal Church, and some revenues of the village of Ayastephanos, the entire revenues of the village of Ayastephanos, which is present-day Yeşilköy. And it was a rich financial source with grape vineyards donated by wealthy Greek Orthodox subjects. So Greek Orthodox subjects could sometimes also donate their entire legacies to the Patriarchate, and they could, do some farming and stuff to, have some income through these holdings. And the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate also had its own staff. It had the patriarch, the preacher, resident monks, some kitchen staff, some gardeners, and daytime staff. It had different parts and functions, which I will be showing you in my next slides. And it had its own social life, a vivid social life, visitors and ceremonies and special days of the Orthodox calendar. So here you see a woodcut from the 16th century travelogue of Salomon Schweiger. And here you can see there are some parts in this entire complex of the monastery of Pamakaristos, which was then the seat of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate. The H here is the Patriarchal Church. A here is the residence of the Patriarch. B, C, D, they should be somewhere around here. I lost them now. They are graves of unnamed monks. And some residences of scribes and spaces for accommodating visiting bishops are here on E and F. And G here is a barn. And yeah, it also had 4 cisterns, which we do not see because they are under the surface, and they had a well to take their water from these cisterns. And in the Paleologan history of this monastery, it also had a hospital, but we do not know about it in the Ottoman period. So briefly, it tells us that it was an entire complex which was able to accommodate its needs and the staff and the needs of the staff by the holdings that they had. So here we have another woodcut, again from the 16th century, but this is basically the same, just a mirrored version of it, probably because it's a woodcut and it's, pressed on the paper. If you want to copy it, it is just mirrored. This is my interpretation, but this is just another picture of it from the 16th century again. Yeah, so I hope I have little time for a brief discussion on the legal status of the non-Muslims under Ottoman rule and the legal status of spaces of Christian worship. I did not take it individually as monasteries, but as like Christian spaces of Christian worship in general, because I think it's more explanatory in this case. So the there is this law of the dhimmi, which means Christians and Jews and other non-Muslims under Islamic rule, and it takes its basis from the Quranic Tawbah, Quranic Surah Tawbah, verse 29, which means, which suggests a specific tax called jizya, and if it's paid by the subjects, they will receive a protected status under Islamic rule, and they will also be exempted from wars, fighting for at the wars of the Islamic rule. And there is this legal status of spaces of Christian worship. So there is different possibilities on if they could be subject to conversion to a mosque later on, or they would be kept to Christian use. It depended on how the land was acquired by the Islamic rule. If the land surrendered to Islamic rule, then all the property of this land could be remained on the Christian side, and they could use it however they want. If the land was taken by siege, then the properties of the land could be considered among the war trophies. But they could be subject to conversion, but in practice, it did not necessarily work that way. And in most places, they just simply converted the most prominent church and left the rest for Christian use. And there is also two categories of Christian spaces of worship. The church could either be kadim or hudus, which means kadim in the case of a church existing on a land prior to Islamic rule, or there's also a different category as hudus, in which a church is built after the Islamic rule. And it's actually a huge topic in 16th century chief lawyer Ebu Suud fatwas, and it also proves that there is a case in which a Christian church could indeed be built from scratch under Islamic rule. So I find it very interesting. And yeah, the practice, very briefly, early Ottomans usually converted the most prominent churches in cities like Bursa and Nicaea, and Mehmet II selectively converted churches of Istanbul, and none of them were converted into mosques. For example, Zeyrek, which used to be Pantokrator, was converted into a madrasa, which offered some education for kids, and Kalenderhane, which used to be Theotokos Kiriotisa back then, was granted to the Kalenderi dervishes as a residence and, as a dervish lodge in general. And imperial ideology began to change by his son, Bayezid II, and more number of churches were converted into mosques and tekkes from the 16th century onwards. There was the crisis in Anatolia and the rising Safavid threats. And in the mid-19th century, non-Muslim communities were granted greater equality in the construction and restoration of their places of worship. So it was way easier in the late Ottoman history to build a church or repair them. So conversion of Panagiotidis. I just wanted to briefly talk about it because initially it was converted into a mosque at some point in classical Ottoman history, but I wanted to just briefly take a look at how it happened. It all started with in the time of Selim I and the Patriarch Theophanes. Selim I just aimed to convert more churches into mosques, but Theophanes just stated that this church, this monastery of Panagiotidis, was granted by Sultan Mehmet II himself to the patriarchate. And unfortunately, Mehmet II's Berat was lost. This document, which was the proof of the granting by Mehmet II. And there is this interesting story of two Janissaries coming to Selim I. They were allegedly aged almost 200 years old, and they claimed that they were there themselves during the siege of Constantinople, and Mehmet II actually granted it to the use of patriarchate, and they are eyewitnesses of that incident. And I mean, Selim I did not necessarily have to believe in that, but he took his initiate, he just took the initiative in remaining it as a church. And it's repeatedly happened in decades, in the following decades, because we see the same incident of the two Janissaries almost 200 years old, coming to the Sultan, different sultans, and claiming that it was indeed granted by Mehmet II. And they over and over again decided to remain it as a church. But initially, as a greater urban transformation took place in the vicinity of Pamakaristos, like more Islamic foundations were found there, and it began to house more and more Muslim populations. Initially, it was converted into a mosque, and the legal identity of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate definitely remained, but in a different building, which is still there in the shores of the Golden Horn. So most remained the same. I just wanted to focus on the what it served, the conversion served in what cases, and in what cases it remained, and in what cases it changed something in the general structure of the monastery. Most remained the same, like the same monument, but in different uses and different community. Slight physical changes and transformation at an institutional level. It was a Selatin Sultanic mosque or congregational Friday mosque, and it happened within a greater environmental transformation in the urban layout. So it's how it happened, like a slight change in the apsis here and the adding of this wall. But very interestingly, these mosaics with facial expressions of Jesus Christ himself were never covered with plaster. So here's a photograph from early 20th century. It was still there, very visible. And all of these were among the parts that were preserved as even after it was converted into a mosque. And these are just maps showing how the vicinity of Pamakaristos changed over centuries. Here we have Pamakaristos here, and the blues are referring to churches, and the greens are referring to Islamic foundations like masjids or mosques in the 15th century. Sorry about my bad coloring, but this is how it looked in the 15th century, and this is how it changed in the mid and late 16th century. Here we can see the rising number of greens here, and in the late 16th century, yeah, as Pamakaristos itself was also converted, we see a very larger number of greens here, like the Islamication of this part of Istanbul, and whereas the shores of the Golden Horn remained mainly populated by Greek Orthodox subjects. So the church was also moved here closer to the Greek Orthodox communities. Yeah, just result in the later centuries. And here is my conclusion. So Greek Orthodox monastic traditions could remain within religious and administrative traditions of the Ottoman Empire by undertaking certain roles within it. And Greek Orthodox Patriarchate served as a prominent example of autonomous religious legal identity with specific taxation, endowment procedures, and an independent ecclesiastical experience. Theory and practice also differed in converting churches in classical Ottoman history because, I just did not have time to show it, but there are churches indeed that were always untouched, and some churches were just converted on paper, but we see on archive, like depths of archives, that they were actually kept being actively used by Christian subjects, and it was tolerated. So it's just about the rising political tensions within the empire, but practically it didn't mean the conversion of many churches. And also, I wanted to say that conversion could result in preservation of architectural legacies and prevented abandonment, and never converted Kadim churches of Istanbul therefore need a better preservation. And yeah, thank you for listening. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Aksa, for that. And I think again, maybe we'll discuss this later, but I don't think enough has been written about Mehmet II on either side, by the way, in terms of the type of individual that he was, and he was a great individual. He did a lot, and he preserved to a great degree orthodoxy within the Ottoman Empire. Thank you again, and we'll come back to that. Our next presenter is Ali Emre Desat. He is a Turkish attorney and civic leader based in Istanbul. A graduate of Başkent University Faculty of Law, he completed his legal internship and following his military service founded his first law office in Izmit, Kocaeli in 2006. Since 2011, he has been registered with the Istanbul Bar Association and currently practices law in Kadıköy, Istanbul. In addition to his legal practice, he has served as an instructor and academic coordination consultant at Modern Law Academy and has delivered training in criminal law and criminal law procedure law for Turkey's banking regulation and supervision agency. He is active in civil society, serving as General Secretary of the Anatolian Side Balkan Immigrants Association, and has held various leadership and voluntary roles in community organizations. He has a strong personal interest in Byzantine history and the Crusades, maintaining both a blog and a YouTube channel dedicated to historical subjects. He speaks English and German and is currently studying Albanian and Spanish. Welcome, Ali, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can hear you. Everything's good.
Thank you very much. I would like to say thank you to inviting me to this YouTube program. Also I would like to thank for joining this society again. I would like to speak about 4 topics about the Vakıf system. First, I would like to begin with the Vakıf system and comparing with the Greek Typikon system. The Turkish Vakıf system and the Byzantine Typikon tradition are 2 important historical models that we can compare in terms of establishing and managing charitable institutions. In both systems, a founder allocates property and revenue for a specific social and religious purpose and regulates it through a written document. In the Ottoman content, this document is called Vakfiye, while the Byzantine system, it is called Typikon, and it defines the institution's purpose and functions. As there are similarities between Vakıf and the Typikon system, the Vakif, the founder of the Vakıf, and the Byzantine Ktetor assumes the similar roles, both seek the social prestige and spiritual merit. Secondly, both structures carry out social functions such as education, healthcare, charity, and religious services. Through the revenue-generating properties and donations, both systems aim to ensure the long-term sustainability of their institutions. In conclusion about this compare, although both systems share the similar charitable foundation logic, they differ significantly in legal structure, especially religious emphasis and the governance model. Secondly, I would like to speak something about the Mount Athos in the Ottoman period. As we see, Mount Athos is an unique religion inhabited by Orthodox religious men, and yes, is still existing within the Ottoman legal order. When Ottomans conquered the region, they didn't completely transform the system as many might expect. On the contrary, they largely preserved the existing order. Everybody has the question why? Because the Ottoman administration maintaining order and ensuring the functioning of tax system were the key priorities. The internal details of the religious life were generally not interfered with. From a legal perspective, I would like to speak as a lawyer, in the window of the legal perspective. Athos represents an interesting example of Ottoman millet system, I mean the nation system. A non-Muslim community could continue living according to its own internal rules. They were free, I mean the minorities under Ottoman rule. Monasteries determined their own international governance, and monks organized their life according to their religious regulations that time. The Ottoman states mainly controlled the border external framework too. In sense of this system, a model of autonomy in charge of the change of the loyalty and taxation. Also, it reflects the pragmatic administrative approach to Ottomans. Athos was also the economically monasteries survived throughout donations, agricultural income, and the external support. In some aspects, this structure resembles the Ottoman Vakıf system. Here we have the role of I would like to mention about the role of the Kadı, I mean the judge of the system, legal system. The Kadı courts usually interned only when disputes arose. Daily religious life remained under the control of the monks, of course. This model was a good example of the delicate balance the Ottoman Empire maintained between the central control and local autonomous system. Also, after the Tanzimat reform time, the late Ottoman time, I mean, the Athos largely retained its special status too. This shows that the Ottoman law was not uniform, but flexible and adaptable depending on the circumstance. The Mount Athos is I think, the rare example of continuing stretching from Byzantine to Ottoman era, and it is now in the modern world. In conclusion of this part, Athos is a small but highly instructive laboratory for understanding how the Ottoman Empire governed the diverse religious community through law. Thirdly, I would like to mention something about, as a case study in law education, especially we are trying to compare the cases together. I would like to compare the Vakıf system in the Hagia Sophia, Ayasofya Vakıf, as today's case system. Hagia Sophia, Ayasofya Vakıf is one of the most important and symbolic example of the Ottoman Vakıf system. It was granted Vakıf status by the Sultan Mehmet the Conqueror, Fatih Sultan Mehmet, after the conquest of the Istanbul, Constantinople. The transformation of the Hagia Sophia into a Vakıf is a significant example demonstrating the principle continuity with the Vakıf concept. The document that we say Vakfiye, the endowment deed, prepared during the process of the defined structures, purpose of use and preservation conditions. Also, the assets consisted of shops, lands, and the commercial properties that provided income for the Vakıf too, because money is every time important. Those were the days too. The administration of the Vakıf was managed by Mutevelli and the related officials. During the Ottoman period, Hagia Sophia Vakıf functioned as both religious and social center. Within the framework of the secular law, after the Republican time, the Vakıf structure was changed. Although the status of the Hagia Sophia changed, the concept of the Vakıf remained central to the legal debates. In conclusion, the Hagia Sophia Vakıf's traditional role is preserving both religious and cultural heritage that can be seen visible today. And this is a powerful example of illustrating the continuity of the Vakıf system and its legal transformation, and its role in the society is very important, I would like to say. Lastly, I would like to mention about a brief summary of the Vakıf system from Ottoman to Republican time. In the Ottoman time, the Vakıf system is an important model of social solidarity created to meet the needs of the society. A Vakıf means permanently allocating a person's property or income to charitable purposes. At the core of this system, the idea of the mutual assistance and producing public benefit was the first. During the Ottoman period, the people's establishment vakıfs for services such as mosques, schools, hospitals, fountains, and soup kitchens also, struggling with the hunger, especially during the bad times or illness times or disasters. Many public services were carried out through the vakıfs, like the state budget. This helps cities also, the vakıfs help cities also to develop and ensure the continuity of the social services. There were many types of vakıfs, but this is a detailed topic. Maybe we can mention later another YouTube program. Also, this system social assistance become and regular and sustainable too. The social state function of the vakıf was very important during Ottoman time because similarity, when we compare it to today's system, the similarity between the welfare state concept and the social needs were met through the vakıfs. This is something to be made today, but the state's role is a bit much more than when we compare to vakıf today. Also, the public soup kitchens, we call it in Turkish imaret. Also, the madrasas, darüşşifas, I mean the hospitals, were the care institutions and healthcare systems those days. Also, the social needs could be met by without placing additional burden of the state budget. In conclusion, vakıfs functioned as social mechanism to public welfare into social aid, education, and healthcare. When we compare today's system, we are going to see the same system, similar system today. I would like to say something about the legal structure of the vakfiye system in the Ottoman time. The document, as I say, was vakfiye, two documents that we speak about the status of the vakıf. First, we are going to speak about the purpose of the vakıf, of course, the sources of the income and the governance of the rules, because all should be written in this, must be written in this vakfiye document. With the vakfiye also serves a legal guarantee ensuring the vakıf's permanence, because it is very important when we compare this vakıf institution to other institutions previously in the historical times, because vakıfs becomes officially by being registered before kadı, I mean the judge. This ensured legality and continuity. Also, the administration carried out by the individuals they called mutevelli, but rather than this vakıfs state, the state established legal supervision mechanism for the vakıfs too. Also, I'd like to mention something about the vakıf economy and revenue model. Shops, bathhouses, we call it in Turkish hamam, inns, we call it in Turkish han, and the agricultural lands were major revenue sources. Also, the new donations were possible that days too. Now, the system-linked urban economy with the social services was very important. It also supported employment and commercial mobility too. Tanzimat era was an important time for vakıf history, vakıf law history, because of the centralization of the vakıfs. There were some more control when we compare it with the past, because many vakıfs previously managed locally under the control of the mütevelli. But after the establishment of the Ministry of Evkaf Nezareti in Turkish, this was a major turning point during the history. The institution recorded vakıf revenues and expenditures too. This caused centralization and standardization and Vakıf administration in the system. Also, the Vakıf's revenues and were used more efficiently with the control of the state. This important change, Vakıfs become modernized and become more closely tied to central government after the Tanzimat Revolution. The establishment of the Ministry of the Evkaf and bureaucratization goes until the end of the Ottoman era. In the late Ottoman time, the transformation of the Vakıf system during the transition of the Republic was different. Sorry, because of my cat, it is going over me. The transition of the Republic caused significant changes of Vakıf system inherited from the Ottoman Empire, because the Vakıf system reorganized through the central institutions, because it was under the control of the Sharia law, but modern legal concepts began applied these Vakıfs too, and with the recordings of the documents and standardization management were the key goals after the Sharia vekaleti and the Turkish passing time and the transformation time. Because of the new republic system, the abolition of the Ministry of Sharia and Evkaf, this regulation occurred in 1924. Religious and Vakıfs were restructured. Religious services and Vakıf administrations were separated because of the new system of the secular system of the state. Because the Ottoman administrative legacy was under the system of Sharia law, and the regulations were important those times. In the Republican time, the General Director of Foundations, Vakıflar Genel Müdürlüğü, was set to regulate the situation of the Vakıfs during the Republic time. Now, I would like to say something about the later times of the Vakıfs, because there were many changes during the civil code and the secularizations of the Vakıf system. But in 1967, the foundations of there was a reform of foundations law reform, reorganization of the Vakıfs, and regulation of the Vakıfs, and the goal of this system was to control how can I say, strengthen the foundation's governance with legal rules, because the protection and the order of the management of the foundation properties were emphasized. At the same time, Vakıfs were also social cultural services continued to be supported nowadays too. In the conclusion of this reformation system, foundation Vakıf law become an important turning point, the modernizations of all the Vakıfs. In conclusion, I would like to say about the last period of our new decade. There was an legal and the current regulations were changed in 2008. It was a major step for reorganization of the Vakıf system in Turkey, because of the foundations become clearer and more modern, like social media, donations, education Vakıfs like universities. That's similar to my University of Başkent. It was a Vakıf university. It belongs to a Vakıf. Also, the foundations law in both periods, especially when we compare it to Ottoman Republic area, they have some core features never change. In both periods, foundations aim to produce public benefit. We call it in Turkish kamu yararı. Education, social aid, cultural services were always important. At last, but not least, the thing that I would like to emphasize for the socio-economic role of the foundation in the modern Turkey, because especially after the corona pandemic, vakıfs have active role in education, healthcare, and cultural and social assistance in Turkey. National and international collaborations have expanded their impact in Turkey too, like your institution in USA too. In conclusion, the foundation of the modern vakıf system have an important institution that strengthened social solidarity and contribute economically, like the earthquake disaster close to 2 or 3 years ago in southeast of Turkey, as you see. Finally, I would like to say that the foundation system, vakıf system from Ottoman era to Republic is not only institution, but also living tradition for us. I'm proud of living under we call it in Turkish, under the umbrella of this vakıf system, because vakıf is very important in our heritage, because adapting this society's changing needs, and also it is under the different legal orders and governance approaches, and although it is transformed and changed from religious based system to legal orders by legal orders and government approaches, and it is a sense that the producing public benefit and strengthening society never changed. For these reasons, the foundations, the vakıfs, also have the tradition to regard it as the most powerful institutions that connects past, present, and represent continuity in Turkish social memory. Because vakıf, similar to Typikon, vakıf comes from Roman and Byzantine time. Not same, but similarities there are. And it goes on during the Ottoman era. As Turkey is the inheritance comes from the Ottoman. We are new Ottomans, we can say. Maybe new regime, new system. And the Vakıf Foundation, we inherited this system too, and we organized and ruled it under new law. That's why it is very important today. The Vakıf, the permanent allocation, the Vakfiye, the document, the Akar, it means the income of the Vakıfs, ensure the economic sustainability of the Vakıf. The Mütevelli, the person responsible for managing the Vakıf. Allocation, we call it in Turkish system tahsis, the binding system that Vakıf assets to specific purposes. Also the Vakıf revenue, Vakıf geliri, funding obtained from rent, operating income, and donations. And the most important thing is the principle that endowed assets cannot be sold or used outside their designated purpose. Thank you for listening to me. I hope it will be helpful for the system and a good summary for the in just like a 10 minutes short time. I hope I am successful about that. Thank you for listening to me.
Ali, thank you so much, and thank you for explaining the Vakıf system as it went from the Ottoman Empire into the Republican system that you have now. Our next presenter is Professor Dr. Theocharis Gregoriadis. He is a professor of economics in the Department of Economics and the Institute for East European Studies at the Freie University of Berlin. His research bridges political economy, economic history, and Orthodox institutional traditions with a regional focus on Eastern Europe, the Eastern Mediterranean, and the broader Middle East. He is the author of Religion and Comparative Development and is currently completing the monograph Muscovy as New Byzantium, Imperial Recoding and Orthodox Political Economy, which examines how Orthodox institutional frameworks shaped state formation and governance in early modern Russia. His work explores the interaction between religious authority, imperial administration, and economic institutions across historical contexts. Welcome, Theocharis, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for the invitation, and thanks to Professor Niehoff Panagiotidis for organizing this panel along with you, Mr. Katsos. So thank you very much. So I'm going to basically, as a concluding presenter, I'm going a bit to wrap up, and I'm going to provide a more comparative and at the same time economic perspective. So from the different presentations of the colleagues, we have seen, and I'm going to use economics language now, that the status of the monasteries has been the outcome of a strategic contracting. So in economics, we understand institutions as contracts, as outcomes related to constraints that put together usually two or several contracting parts. And of course, in order to understand Orthodox monasteries under Islamic rule in that framework, we need, of course, to understand the gains for both sides, the Islamic authority and at the same time the Orthodox collective. So, and I would like to agree with the argument that has been proposed across the presentations that, of course, Orthodox monasteries under Islamic rule survive because they also functioned as economic institutions, negotiated fiscal autonomy, and they preserved symbolic authority beyond state collapse. So essentially, the church becomes the substitute of the lost Byzantine Empire and an adaptive mechanism to the new Ottoman state. So, and of course, I mean, there are several, and this coexistence is not, of course, artificial. It builds up on existing, on prior patterns of coexistence that we observe at normal life, at the urban life, and we observe also particularly at frontier zones. I think that it is also very important to understand exactly this frontier context of the Byzantine Islamic coexistence. And of course, the very interesting relationship between the Byzantine Empire and the Arabs, where Syria and the Orontes Valley serve as the primary frontier between the Byzantine Empire and the Arab forces. And these dynamic borders and frontier zones facilitate an environment where religious groups and ethnic groups intersect. And what the Ottomans did, and we heard a lot about the Ottoman practice, so is something that we can also see in the Umayyad and Abbasid periods, where we have a well-documented Muslim-Christian coexistence with inclusive treatment of church elites. And in frontier cities like Antioch, today is Antakya in the Hatay province of Turkey, religious groups lived within their own communal boundaries, of course, but at the same time creating a cosmopolitan environment, albeit without a direct horizontal contact. A very important case study, if one wants to also understand the comparative dynamics of monasteries under Islamic rule, is the case of Palestine and the Jerusalem Patriarchate for obvious reasons. We know very much from different religious contexts that the economics of pilgrimage has been connected with resources, with the use of resources, with donations, but also with the formation of markets. And this is something very important. So Palestinian monasteries being connected to the Holy Land itself and the Holy Sepulchre, the place where allegedly the resurrection of Jesus has happened, become artisanal and pilgrimage hubs under Islamic rule. So under Islamic rule, they functioned as significant places of artisanal production and held a central position in this economics of pilgrimage. And of course, the monks and the nuns that we're talking about provided a source of voluntary free labor for monastic enterprises, for businesses connected to the monasteries. Moreover, monastic land served as a source of agricultural products and functioned as a vital financial collateral. So the monastic land was also important for the creation of this market framework around the Holy Land and the holy monuments. Moreover, we have the presence of transnational patronage. So the Georgians, as they were called, the Iberians at the time, provided critical funding for the Holy Sepulchre and the Jerusalem Patriarchate, despite Islamic territorial control. So this is the case of Palestine. And another very important case that I would like to mention is also the case of Serbia in the Balkans, where monasteries were very important institutions that facilitated the resilience of Serbs into the Ottoman era. So monasteries like Grazanica and Prizren preserved in the form of a spiritual geography the aesthetic and the memory of the Battle of Kosovo, a very important battle for Serbian identity. And of course, monasteries like Studenica served as enduring symbols of Serbian heritage throughout the Islamic period, and of course, I mean, the Hilandar Monastery in Athos. Moreover, I mean, if one wants to understand institutional survival and the interaction with post-Byzantine culture, it's important to think the role of monasteries as feedback institutions for the church, and as places for the survival of post-Byzantine culture until the 19th century. So where we have the rise of nations. So monasteries are economic agents, right? So historical evidence from sites like Megisti Lavra and Tiviron, monasteries in Athos, shows that monasteries acted as resilient economic agents, regardless of who is in power. So, and of course, the monasteries, and when we think about monasteries as economic agents, so what do we mean? We mean, we talk about the management excellence of the monks. Monks were regarded as outstanding managers of agricultural and financial resources. We're talking about elite interlinkages that we also observe since the time of the Byzantine period. So deep connections between monastic estates and administrative elites. And of course, fiscal privileges that, as the prior speakers have mentioned, continue from the Byzantine into the Ottoman period. And so the adaptability of the monastery, of monasteries like Megisti Lavra and Tiviron, for example, helped them accumulate more money, made them financial powerhouses, and in that sense allowed them to become sophisticated economic agents and across different imperial structures. At the same time, the importance of Constantinople, of post-Byzantine, of Ottoman Constantinople, for the Slavic world and also Moscow, also happens through translations, South Slavic translations from Bulgaria and Serbia that reach Rus through monastic channels. So the Muscovites observed in the beginning of their church, the Byzantine Patriarch, as the continuation of a transnational secular authority, helping to maintain Orthodox institution under non-Christian rule. And of course, also the adoption of the Byzantine double-headed eagle by Grand Prince Ivan III illustrates also the transmission of Byzantine political symbols into new contexts. So what I think is also very important is to see, so the monasteries, I mean, in institutional theory, we talk a lot about slow-moving and fast-moving institutions. Of course, the monasteries, I mean, the monasteries exhibit, some monasteries can be considered as fast-moving institutions, so very adaptable. Some of them are slower in that sense, but at the same time, what I think everybody agrees about is that monasteries really offer a very important pattern of persistence. So in political economy and economic history, we care a lot also about persistence studies, right? So about how an institution that existed and was very influential 100 years ago, for example, or 200 years ago, still may have an impact today. How can it help us understand contemporary political economy? And I think that monasteries from Southeastern Europe to Palestine and the Middle East can play in differential ways a very important role also in that direction in research. A very interesting example of a monastic center is Patmos, for example, in Greece, in the Dodecanese, that has served also as a center for religious and economic activity. Very important is also the case of Antioch. I mean, in a more bracketed historical context in the Middle Ages. So following the Byzantine reconquest of cities like Antioch, the Christians were resettled, though the cities never became fully, I mean, if one can use quote, Hellenized again or Byzantine again. So leaving a mixed cultural legacy for the later Ottoman period. So I think also the role of this imperial diversity is a very important tool in our understanding of the monasteries as centers of economic activity, because we're not talking about the era of nation states. We're talking about imperial structures that survive up to the beginning of the 20th century. And I think this is crucial here. And also I think when it comes, and I think I will close my comment in that sense, I mean, when it comes to the Sinai monastery, I think its location in the vicinity of the Suez Canal and in this very strategic point of the Sinai Peninsula connecting practically east with west makes the study of the economics of Sinai monasticism between Africa and the Middle East, between Egypt and Palestine, across empires, a very important research project. Yeah, with that, I would like to close. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, because obviously economics plays a big role across the board into not only the past but the present. We do have a couple of guest attendees with us. I don't know, Yasmin or Kamel, if you have any comments, please feel free to join us in the discussion if you'd like to say a few words.
Actually, I would like to go before the Ottoman period to the Mamluk period, because there was a proliferation of waqf during the Mamluk period. And it started off as a legal trick, not only for charity, but the Mamluks, as you know, they were slaves and they couldn't inherit according to the Sharia. So they created an entire system of waqf so that their families could inherit their wealth by being the administrators of the waqf. Another trick that was used was to name women as executors of waqf, because women could only inherit half of what their brothers could inherit, or if they had no brothers, then the uncles would inherit. So that was another legal trick to enable women. And if you look at the waqfiyat, about 20% of the waqfiyat were waqfs established by women and run by women to do this. And another legal trick was for other religions to turn their wealth into a waqf so that they don't have to be converted when there was a takeover or a change in the administration. Like you mentioned about Hagia Sophia that was converted from a church to a mosque. If the waqfs in Egypt, at least, the Fatimid Empire gave the synagogues, the Jewish synagogues, waqfiyat, so that they would remain as such in the Jewish possession. And they even related this to the Quran, to Surah Al-Imran 92, that you will never achieve righteousness until you donate something of what you cherish. So the Waqf was, yes, a charitable institution, but at the same time, it was run by certain families of the owners who established the Waqf. This is what I wanted to add. I also wanted to add that with the new republics, the Waqfs were a thorn in the eye, and they were alerted to this during the French occupation of Algeria, because the French wanted to do lots of things, and they were stuck with having, I don't know, 50% or so of the wealth tied up in Waqf. So they couldn't do anything, and they couldn't even take it away. So one example that comes to mind immediately is Al-Azhar, because Al-Azhar was extremely, extremely rich due to all the waqfs that were done in its name, being a religious institution, a school, a university, and they also had housing for the students that came from other places, the soup kitchen, and God knows what, and all this was financed through this waqf. So when the King Fuad wanted to be the ruler of the Muslim world and get the title Amir al-Mu'mineen after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, he asked Al-Azhar to issue a fatwa that declared him Amir al-Mu'mineen, and Al-Azhar refused, which is why they called into being a Dar al-Ifta. And Dar al-Ifta was appointed by the government to issue the fatwas that they wanted, since Al-Azhar was too independent because they were rich. They didn't need the government. So after the 1952 revolution, they created the Ministry of Awqaf to oversee all the Awqaf and control the tap that opens the money or closes it, to make Al-Azhar dependent and to turn the Sheikh Al-Azhar from an independent being to a government servant. So these are 2 points that I wanted to add to the very rich discussion that we had until now.
Thank you, Dr. Amin. Kamal, any thoughts, comments that you would like to make? I leave it to you.
Thank you, and thank you to all panelists. It was very, very informative discussion about Waqf. Just I have a 2 short comment regarding the interpretation of Waqf. One of them is in civil code of Iranian civil code. We have very similar to jurisprudence interpretation of the Waqf. We say reserved of property and use outcome of that for many subjects. Yes, and we have also in jurisprudence, some very, very important things regarding to this discussion. The Waqf in Sharia is institutional rule, it's not institutional rule, but it's sign root. It means it was before Islam. It was some regulations regarding very similar to Waqf, and signed by Islam and maybe some Islamic rules. And one things that is very, very, very important also, it's Waqf, charity and will is very similar. One of them is some manuscripts combine both of them. For example, mix both of them in one manuscript. We have some some Orthodox church in Iran. We have published before many manuscripts and documents regarding to this will, and also charity that mixed in one document. It's very also important. This is my comment in this.
Thank you so much. I know it's very late where everyone is. So, but please, you open up your mics, ask any questions to each other. And again, I know it's late, but whatever questions you have of each other, please feel free to have that discussion amongst yourselves. Yeah,
No, I'm sorry.
any thoughts?
I should leave this wonderful discussion more or less now, because tomorrow
Please.
morning I have an appointment at the Patriarchate
Okay.
to visit the Metochion of Mount Sinai in Balta in Istanbul. And a
Excellent.
Christian from Antakya will open me the Metochion. So I hope nobody is disappointed that I will soon leave. And I have no question.
Okay. Anyone else to say something? Let's just wrap it up then, because I know it's late where you are. Where I am, there's a storm, but it's much earlier. So, Dr. Anastasios Nikopoulos, any comments, thoughts, final thoughts?
No questions. All presentations were excellent and gave a comprehensive dialogue, quite constructive for the scientific research.
Thank you so much. Aksa, any final thoughts before we call it a day? I guess Ali, any thoughts, final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I would like to say something about the continuing role of the Vakıf system. I hope it goes on and becomes widespread all over the world, because of the future of the world is difficult, unfortunately, especially after the corona pandemic, etc. And it will be widespread all over the world. Thank you for listening to me.
No. Thank you, Ali, for being with us. Theocharis, any thoughts, final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yes, I think that it is very important to see monasteries as a source of data as well. I think that research programs on the status of monasteries, of Orthodox monasteries under Islamic rule, can be very informative when it comes to network analysis, the connections of monasteries with the local economies, economic networks among monasteries themselves in Palestine, in Anatolia, in the Balkans, in the Eastern Mediterranean, and also essentially to integrate Orthodox monasteries in Asia Minor and the Middle East, in more or less in this discussion about how we understand the entanglement of religion and development.
Thank you. Aksa, are you with us, by the way, just to say some final thoughts? Yes, please.
Yeah, actually, I just have a small note about what you said after my presentation. Thank you about it. Yeah, you're definitely right that little is written about the personality of Mehmet II, and it is usually written like about his brutal authoritarian leader and his lust for acquiring more lands. I don't know, maybe because it sells better, but less is spoken about his intellectual interests and his special interest in Byzantine traditions and all of these theological discussions with Gennadios, and he's also like efforts of him in incorporating the existing Byzantine elite in late Byzantine Constantinople to his administrative system. So I think as a final thought, the key answer lies here in the fact that he declared himself as the Kaiseri Rum, like the new Roman emperor, rather than the one who demolished it. So this is my final thoughts, and thank you so much for involving me in this panel.
Thank you for your final thoughts. the reality, I think, was discussed by Johannes and other people, that in fact there was a continuum, between the ancient period, let's say what we call the Byzantine period, the Ottoman period, etc. There was a continuum of institutions that basically changed but didn't change in reality. And I think, to your point about Mehmet II, I think it depends what angle people are looking at. There's always these polemics between societies, but when you analyze the man, and you analyze some of the things that he did, he was actually a genius in many different ways. I mean, he did have classical works in Greek, for example, that have his notes on the side. And he did, in fact, he was, in fact, a multiculturalist. So I wanted to bring that up, and I think it's important for us to understand that, like discussing him or like discussing the Waqf, I mean, it's a very interesting thing, and I think what was to me indicated, because I'm not a specialist in any of this, but what I found interesting is the change between historical, ancient, Byzantine, Ottoman, into the modern nation state, okay, which has transformed the concept of what we've been talking about. And I thought it was very interesting, some of the things that, for example, Ali and everybody else was saying, and the economic aspects of all this. I think it was a fascinating discussion. I thank you all for being with us today, and hopefully we can meet again and continue this very, very important discussion among cultures, because I think if we understand these things, I think we can speak to each other a little bit better sometimes than is happening on the international stage. Thank you again for being with us. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Just a final remark.
Yes,
The
final remark.
archaeologists,
Yes.
because you said this about Mehmet II.
Yes.
The archaeologists found now out that the tomb of Mehmet II, which is in the Fatih Mehmet Jami in the Istanbul district, is exactly vertical above the tomb of Constantine the Great.
Oh, fascinating. I find that fascinating. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, where did we find this? Because this I like. This is interesting to me.
This is a long story, and this has to do with Byzantine sources, Ottoman sources, a lot of archaeology in the new volume edited by the famous British Byzantinist Margaret Mullet, is that, the place where the Fatih Mehmet Jami is situated is exactly the place of the Church of the Holy Apostles. And this was destroyed by an earthquake. And first, the patriarch, as Rahime rightly said, moved from the old see close to Hagia Sophia to this Church of the Holy Apostles. And then this was destroyed by an earthquake again. And then he moved to Pamakaristos. And now they made recently excavations. This is by geosondage, in this volume, which I read only in part, edited by Margaret Mullet, about the location of the Church of the Holy Apostles beneath of the Fatih Mehmet Jami. And they found out that Mehmet Fatih, who is buried there, built his tomb exactly vertically above the tomb of Constantine the Great.
Fascinating. I find fascinating. Ali, you raised your hand. You had a comment, Ali?
Just I would like to say thank you about the Fatih Sultan Mehmet again. He's a brilliant and different from I think he's different from the other Padishah, speaking 6 languages, including Greek language, a very humanist and reformist, and I think he was the beginner of the Renaissance movement by making his portrait to Berlinis, but he was very wonderful. I also respect for him, and he's always different in my hearts, including, as my young lady says, Rahime says, the Kaiserurum. It also affected me every time.
Thank you, Ali, for that.
He never rejected the old culture, old empire. Thank you.
Well, some of us, even though no one wants to say it on our end, some of us, like myself, believe that he, in fact, saved orthodoxy, in the world, actually, by protecting it to a certain degree from the beginning of the Ottoman period. Again, thank you, everyone. It's been a fantastic discussion, and hopefully we can get together again and explore this fascinating foundation that was created a long time ago, and hopefully we can try to preserve it and see how we find some of these records. So, Johannes, you're still with us. We have to find the 80% of the information. You said there was only 20% that has been translated. Where do we find the 80%?
Next time.
Okay, next time, hopefully we will get into that. And
I should go for sleeping.
Okay, you go for sleeping. It's late. Thank you again to everyone.
Thank you, Louis. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ.
Και εγώ επίσης.
Καλή Σαρακοστή.
Καλή Σαρακοστή. Thank you again.
Καλή καθαρή Δευτέρα.
Exactly. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.